Hello and welcome to Gore and Grapes, where I review horror films and enjoy a glass of wine while I tingle your spine. I'm your host Carla, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1. Hello everybody, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I have a very special guest here, Ruben Garza,
Hey.
who also happens to be my cousin. I had invited Ruben over to Gore and Grapes because he's also an avid horror fan, and so I wanted to get his input on a film that we both truly enjoy. So hello, Ruben.
Hi, how are you? I'm here to make your night horrible, by the way, with the way I am. I mean, we're cousins. I gotta make your night horrible. Like, who would I be if I didn't pick on you?
So anyways, Ruben, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Ruben, as you've heard many times already within a minute. So I'm Carla's cousin. We both grew up in Little Village. I play in a metal band called Through and Through, and I'm the lead vocalist. And I guess a lot of the metal that I listen to, and, a lot of the punk rock that I listen to, got me into a lot of the horror films that I love today.
And on that note, and this is a question I never had asked you actually, but what got you into horror? Was there a movie in particular that got you into this? Or was it an introduction through music that you had listened to?
So I would say there was definitely music that got me into horror. Because when I was younger, I hated horror films. I'd like run to the kitchen, right? My mom's like, "Stop being so scared." And, I'm like 5 years old, and she's like, "Hey, tenle miedo a la vida, no a las películas." My mom.
And she's right.
My mom being my mom, right? And I was horrified, but like, as I got into like music, I remember like getting into Slipknot and kind of like, I know, right? Cliche Slipknot, right? But I mean, still a good band, whether I listen to them or not like I used to. But that was like one of the things, right? Like I would see these guys with masks, and like one of them was wearing a clown mask, and I remember just thinking like, that kind of low-key reminded me of It. So then I was watching Slipknot videos, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to watch the movie It now, right? It sounds so funny, right? Like, I'm hearing myself say it, I'm like, that's a funny thing. And I think one of the Slipknot videos spit it out. They pay homage or like tribute to The Shining, like one of the videos. And I remember like Joy Jordison's riding the bike, and like the other two percussionists are like the twins, and Corey Taylor's like hitting the door with an axe. And I remember like, oh, I've seen that movie when I was younger because my dad made me watch it with him to scare me. So it's like things like that, right? Like got me into horror films. And then like,
it's crazy how they both overlay or interlap with one another. You see a lot of bands like Mortician who end up sampling horror movies in particular, and then you see really name a band in the metal sphere who tend to get inspiration from horror movies.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy for people to segue from one thing to the other.
Yeah, and plus, I had a creepy cousin
Yours truly.
who talk to me about certain horror films as I was getting older. Well, yeah, that's like a thing, right? Then like I discovered horror punk, like Murder Dolls and Wednesday 13, even though it like has to do with Slipknot members as well, right? Mm-hmm. But like I remember there was like lyrics from a Wednesday 13 song where he said, just hanging out with the ghost of Vincent Price. And I didn't know who Vincent Price was. 12, 13-year-old from the hood actually knows about Vincent Price. You'd be surprised. But during that time, I don't think anybody really knew about Vincent Price. And I looked him up, and I saw like all these movies, right? And I remember like House on Haunted Hill was one of them. And I remember just like thinking like, I just saw House on Haunted Hill. I didn't see him in it. And it's like, you know, they're talking about the original house. I mean, or what is it? House on Haunted Hill. I'm over here slurring words. But yeah, like that was like one of the things, right? Like, I remember that was like those specific lyrics like that, and like realizing like, oh, that was actually a remake. The one that I saw in the original one came out during this time, and it was like real. It was real cool to like know like, oh damn, this guy's talking about Vincent Price, right? And then as I got older in high school, someone showed me the Misfits, and I realized like all their songs were like horror themed movies and stuff like that, and I thought that was really cool. Like I started watching like every horror film like that the Misfits were basing their songs off of, or like lyrics that they would mention, right? Like, you know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. I find that you know, like I said, there's a lot of music, and it's not just, you know, metal in particular, but it tends to overlap with one another, and I think it's just so easy to pick up on it and get inspiration from that, and so that's really awesome. I never. It's not that I didn't care to ask. I just didn't.
She didn't care.
I did. That's why you're here now.
She's like, your story's stupid. I've heard it. You know, like,
I knew about how the music that you had listened to had influenced, you know, or had just lit that pathway for you for horror movies. But I didn't know that was, you know, like with Slipknot, and, you know, how you were not very open to horror movies as a kid. I think naturally a lot of us aren't.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of how I started. It was, you know, it was with Predator. My dad was watching it, and I watched it with him, though it's, you know, a sci-fi horror movie.
Yeah.
But, you know, the movie that really marked it for me was Child's Play 2.
Oh, okay.
I had walked in on my... I know, it was so...
Your dad let you watch that? That's insane.
He did. It was fucking nuts.
I shouldn't judge, because my dad let me watch Roadhouse with him. That was really awkward.
Oh my god. So what movies in particular stand out to you? Or if you could name a couple of your favorite movies, what would they be?
So, I'm going to name my top 5. And then you got to name your top 5.
Okay.
I'm not going to answer this and then you not tell me. Because you actually have never told me your top 5, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So, I guess you could say my shit would be cliche, right? Because I love the original Halloween. Like, I just love how scary that movie is. And it's not even, like, gory or, like, bloody, right? Like, it's just fucking great suspense.
Yeah.
The movie. Friday the 13th, the second one. Actually, I love that one. Just all around, such a great movie. I had a, you know, I saw it when I was younger. I remember watching the first one and the second one. Like, my aunt, like, tortured me. It was like, you're going to watch both. I'm like, no, I don't want to watch these movies. I'll tell my mom. But, you know, like, as I got older, I love those movies, right? So then there's the first Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm really big into slashers, as you can tell. So then there's definitely number 2, right? What was it? It's like I'm battling with my head, like trying to let myself know. Oh,
that's cool.
The 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and number 1 would be the original House of Wax.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's what we're here to talk about, right?
It's the right episode for you to be on. That's for sure. That's crazy. So it sounds to me like your favorites or your favorite genre are slashers.
Yeah.
For the most part.
It's fun to see people suffer.
And you're, you know, I feel like you're onto something, because I feel that, you know, not to get too into it, but I find that slasher movies are films that really uncover repression or oppression, you know, down to people's desires. You know, sometimes it is, you know, like homicidal desires. Sometimes it's, you know, sexual, as you've seen in, you know, like Nightmare on Elm Street, that tends to play on it a little bit, even Halloween. So that's quite interesting. I do find that slashers are perhaps maybe the the subgenre of horror that's at the mainstream and everyone seems to recognize.
Yeah.
But I think that there's still a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. No, no, definitely, I agree with you because there's like, I don't, I don't want to like speak on it, but I feel like, and I might be wrong on this, but like seeing the woman lead in most slasher films is kind of, I mean, again, I don't speak for women, but it's like, I would imagine it's kind of empowering, right? Because it's like, the guy's a dumb fuck who's gonna probably get killed because all he wants to do is get laid. The second guy is probably just like some stoner. And yeah, you got, there's a few girls who die, but like the final girl, right? Like, is a smart one, the genuine one, the one who doesn't fall into like anybody's trends and is herself. And that's pretty cool to be, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that women have to be these innocent damsels in distress, right? Like, not at all, but like,
women are put into this position where they do have the strength, and that they're able to show those capabilities. That you're right, it's not just some damsel in distress. This really does fight the stereotype that that women are survivors, and women are just as capable as men to move forward and to progress. And I think you're right. And I do think that it's quite refreshing to put women into that as the main focus.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. A lot of the times when you see those movies, it's just like this real, it's trauma filled, right? And I could only imagine what women are thinking while they're watching stuff like that. But at the same time, there's a little bit of hope, right? Because it's like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Fucked that motherfucker up that was chasing me out of my wits and my fucking strength, and that's how I see, and I hope, right, that like some people like find strength in these movies, because at the end of the day, like, the final girl is the one who's whooping ass, and it ain't the dumb fucking muscle head, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. And I think that a lot of what we're talking about is segueing into the House of Wax review that we're about to do, because there is a protagonist who is a woman, and she does overcome, a very traumatic event. And I think that it's also a slasher,
before they were called slasher films.
Exactly.
Because that movie, to me, why I like it so much is just like the fact that it's like this woman who figures out that it's time to stop being dependent on anyone, and that she has to like fight back against this, even though she's put in the position without, obviously without her own will, unwillingly, but she figures it out, and that's the part of that movie that's like, it sets what the future holds for a lot of slasher films with final girls.
Absolutely, I agree. And before we get into it, you had asked me about my
your
5
top favorite.
I know, and I don't think I have a 5. I have a lot of really good movies, or I have a lot of movies that I love and enjoy, but I can never categorize them into a 5. But first and foremost, that'll be Child's Play, particularly Child's Play 2. Oh my God. You're a hater. You just don't like Chucky.
I just think a moving doll is stupid.
I have a lot to say about that, but I will unpack that at some point in the future. But anyways, as I was saying, I would say Child's Play 2, that's my favorite. I think that there's so much to that movie. I was actually listening to a podcast some time ago about capitalism and Child's Play 2, so I thought that was really cool. I would say Child's Play, and a lot of my favorites after that are found footage films. I would say Wreck is my next one. And then Noroi, The Curse also stands out to me, the found footage film from Japan.
That's a good one.
That's amazing. That one legitimately creeped me out. I never get tired of it, but I have trouble sleeping at night for sure. I can't name the other two off the top of my head. I would probably say Predator as well as a sci-fi horror. And I'll have to get back to you on the fifth one. I can't think of.
Ooh. Just don't say Cannibal Holocaust.
No, I condemn that movie.
Yeah, no, when I was younger, I don't know why I thought that was cool. Like, oh, they had to kill real animals. And now I'm older, I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, that's so, like, I get that whole scene is iconic where, like, that girl's, like, the stick is going through her, and, like, it's one of the most iconic things in horror films, but, like, you can't be down with something like that. Like, and I know there's a few more movies that done stuff like that.
Yeah.
You kill animals, and it's just like, why would you kill animals like that? Like, you know, you as a vegetarian, you know, like, I'm sure many of the reasons why you're vegetarian is because you care about animals.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know, I might sound like a hypocrite because I'm not vegetarian, but, like, I don't want to see an animal die whilst I'm watching the TV for real. Like, I don't want to see stuff like that, you know, so stuff like that. The thing that you have to remember about horror films is that it's all an imagination of some sort, right?
I think you're right. I think it's more of a fantasy for some people. Yeah. And I think that there's a difference, and there is definitely a line between, you know, creating art and then creating something of your fantasy, you know, especially with something like that that's quite delicate. There are other, you know, like snuff, or like, I can't remember the name, but like those movies that border on snuff films, it's like, it's hard to tell if it's real or not. Yeah. I think that's a little fucked up.
Yeah. And that's like one of the things too, because like I feel like Cannibal Holocaust actually does play well into the, like with the humans, like plays well like with the whole like, did this really happen or not to them, you know? But it just, again, back to the whole actually harming live beings. It's like, no, you can't get down with that.
It's crazy.
And I know a bunch of people are like, oh, that's the greatest horror film of all time. No, it's not.
If you hear anybody say that Cannibal Holocaust or a Serbian film,
I hate,
you know, are their favorites, yeah, fuck that. I remember saying that too back in college. I'm like, why is this as popular as it is?
Yeah, I did not watch a Serbian film. I turned that off after like 5 minutes. I was like, I can't. I'm not. Like, oh,
it's ridiculous.
There's some films that like, and maybe that's why like, I like, because a lot of the slasher films that we watch, it's fantasy. Right, like, there's no zombie that's gonna come out and kill you with a machete, right? Like, there's not gonna be a guy that gets shot 6 times, like Loomis says, I shot him 6 times.
Yeah.
Right, where like, and somebody's gonna keep getting up. Like, maybe the most realist slasher one would be Chainsaw Massacre that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And even House of Wax, right? Because, you know, you could survive a fire and decide to start killing your enemies.
You know, that is quite realistic. You know, I do see somebody doing that. And it's like, it's so, like I said, it's realistic. It's really not all that far-fetched.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that you hear about that on the news.
Yeah, like there's like some movies that are like really crazy, like for horror film thrillers or psychological. Like I just saw one called I was watching it on Netflix today while I was at work because it was slow. I was watching that, it's like this kid who finds, I forgot what it's called, but it's this kid who finds out his dad is a killer. And like the dad, like the dad is like he takes pictures of the victims and stuff like that. I forgot. I can't remember the name of it, which it came out 2018. And I just saw it today, and I can't remember, but it's a type of knot, right? It's like it's called, I forgot what it's called. I'm like,
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'll probably grab my phone later and be like, this is what it was called.
This is it.
But, you know, like, a lot of those psychological films are, like, pretty scary, too, because that's, like, some realistic shit. Like,
It's definitely something that I think everyone has experienced in one form or another. It's definitely battling your inner demons,
Yeah,
or I think it's just so natural for us humans to go there.
yeah,
I think that no human's perfect, and I think that when you really test the human psyche, it can really go anywhere. And I do think that with House of Wax, you get to see, someone acting on that.
yeah,
Where someone as the professor, you know, or as a professor once was, someone so caring and someone so artistic and creative and sane,
yeah,
to begin with, and then later on an act
yeah.
of revenge happens to turn it all around.
But let's be honest, you could kind of see his insanity peaking even when things are still going good.
Well, before you get to that point, I'd like to introduce our drinks of choice.
Oh yeah.
Because we cannot start a review on Gore Grapes without our drink. So Ruben doesn't drink. He is straight edge, and so today he's going to be drinking something else.
So this is sangria, señorial.
Oh yeah.
So when I was a kid, it's funny, right? Like that I chose this one because I feel like it's. I was never, even when I did drink, I was never really a wine person. But I remember this drink. If I had to compare the two, maybe this is the closest to wine.
I think so.
But I remember like drinking these as a kid because we used to pretend that I had alcohol and we would act drunk.
Oh my
I
god.
remember me and my brother like grabbing this and we're like, dude, I'm fucking wasted. Talking like white boys. But yeah, like,
That
yeah,
that's honestly really coincidental.
right?
It's like I remember asking you what you were gonna drink. Like maybe it's orange juice, or
Right?
but that's awesome.
No, but yeah, I remember like just thinking, well, one of these like, I'm fucking drunk.
Oh my
And
god.
my mom be like, stop acting like you're drunk. You're just drinking soda.
It's like, Mom, let me pretend.
And all right, like let me act like my dad,
Oh my god.
right? Let me be my dad. No, like that. But
Thank you for bringing that. That's great. I also have actually some wine that Ruben brought me because to be completely honest, forgot my bottle, so I left it up to him. And the one he chose, which is actually a great one, is Ménage à Trois Kate Decadence in Cabernet from 2023. So giving Ruben a moment here to fill his drink. I'm very excited to drink this, and I'm very excited to start off.
Sorry.
I'm really excited to start season 3 with a bang and with a good drink and a great
A
guest.
person she doesn't really like.
So, anyways, cheers.
We can do it better.
Can't. Oh,
Why does it sound like that? There we go. This tastes like crap. No, I'm playing.
stop it.
No, it's actually pretty good.
Honestly, I haven't had that in a long time, but I feel like what this tastes like probably tastes just like that.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really smooth. Has like some blackberry notes. Though I'm kind of surprised actually that I haven't taken any certification courses to be
A wine taster?
yeah, one
Don't
day.
you just like swab it around your mouth and then you spit it out?
Good. That's disgusting.
That's what I thought a certified
Yes.
wine taster does.
You don't spit it out.
I've seen videos. People just spit that shit out in the bucket.
That's disgusting.
Not allowed to swear, by the way.
We've been swearing. Ew.
I'm such a piece of shit. I'm sorry, guys. You know what? She's gonna talk to you guys for a bit. I gotta take this hoodie off. I'm sweating. I'm fat.
So while he's doing his thing, we will be reviewing, as you all know, House of Wax, the original one, not the one from 2005, I believe, with Paris Hilton, as everybody likes to recall. I had seen House of Wax, I want to say maybe about a decade ago or so. It's definitely one of my favorite of the Vincent Price movies. And if anybody who's anybody knows about this movie, this was the movie that had put Vincent Price on to horror films. And after that, he was in high demand for other movies, like The Fly, I think, was the one a little bit after this one. I I can't remember the other ones, but he was in quite high demand after that, and he became the Vincent Price that we know today. I also wanted to ask, what now that you're back, what is this your favorite Vincent Price horror movie, or is there another Vincent Price movie that you enjoy?
Yes, it is my favorite Vincent Price movie, but I also love Last Man. What is it? The Last Man on Earth?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know why I can't remember names. I can't even remember my own birthday. But
I don't even remember yours. Oh, it's this month.
Yeah, I think so. Someday from now.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Very early. Well, yeah, Last Man on Earth is probably my second favorite because it's funny that like I have like these comfort movies where like I like to put on to go to sleep to because I've seen them already, right?
Yeah.
So like Last Man on Earth is one of them. The remake to that movie is actually there's two remakes to it actually.
I think you're right.
There's a Soylent Green and I Am Legend. Are actual remakes to Last Man on Earth.
That's right. It's a great movie. Vincent Price, as I've talked about plenty in this podcast, Vincent Price is fantastic, and I think in House of Wax he really pushed it. Like we were talking about earlier, he really embodied the soft and creative, individual who took a lot of pride in his work. He seemed to, he was like any normal person who enjoyed doing what he did. And then all of a sudden, after he was done wrong by his partner, he had turned into someone completely normal, but he hid it very well from everybody else.
Yeah. True. It's Vincent Price is just like, I feel like he's every character he plays, I feel it's a little bit of him.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing like how good he is in these movies. I know some people find him cheesy. I've tried showing people these movies and they're like, I don't want to watch black and white stuff. I don't want to watch stuff from the 60s or the 50s.
That's messed out.
And it's just like,
those are the best ones.
Right? Like you're fucking dumb. Like I've met people who are like, I don't want to watch stuff from the 80s. Like, what?
That's weird.
Yeah, right? Like,
I think this one, I don't know if this one was a black and white, it was colorized.
I think it was colorized. I think if the original one was black and white. But,
they did it so well. I think that this movie really embodies a lot of things. I think that one of the things that stands out to me is, and I'm sure you've heard this yourself, being a musician and an artist, that you must suffer for your art.
Yeah.
And
you can lose it at any time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is what this movie really captures, where he was willing to go so far in order to save his museum, and going as far as killing people over it, and just to keep his, in a really weird way, keeping his art alive by killing other people.
Yeah, that's definitely like you have to take in consideration like everything he's been through. He found a way to make a positive he made a positive in a very negative way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like he obviously started killing people and he started posing them, putting wax on them, and posing them as like whatever character he was trying to make. Like, what was the one that Joan of Arc? What's the other one that he did?
He did one where his partner,
was like
at his death scene, or
his death scene, right? Like he had him hanging, which is crazy. Like, things like that, right? Like it's alchemy. What is that one thing? Alchemy or somebody talked to me about it recently, where you turn a negative into a positive. Sorry, I speak more Spanish than English, but like
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, like, you know, he turned a negative into a positive in the most worst way.
It's very morbid, and it's like I think that there's something to say about how he decided to do this. Like he could have, well, I mean, he already did, right? With that girl who ended up being under the Joan of Arc,
Yeah,
figure at the very end, or the second version of her.
yeah,
Stole her from the morgue and whatnot. But I'm not saying that there's an ethical way to do that, but he could have done this a different way. But it's clear that he was so far deep that he wanted to prove a point, and that the point that he proved was by having his partner's body displayed
yeah.
for everyone to see. And people were saying, oh, it's so real, while they were walking through the museum. It's like,
Those aren't real bodies, people.
yeah.
Like, but you know what? To him, his art was always real. And like,
Mm-hmm.
if before they burned down the museum, and before, how would I say, like, all that stuff happened, like, remember, I think there's like a part, there's like a time where he's even like talking to them, he's like talking to his art, like, aren't you this clever, and, or like if they woke up and did something to him to like laugh at him, right? Or like
His partner even points that out.
Yeah.
I think at some point that that it's like they're his friends, and you're right. I think especially in the beginning you get to see. I guess it depends on how you interpret it, but how I saw it was that how he spoke to his art was a testament to how connected he was to his work, and that he was also, just a kind person like anybody else, right? Like as someone who is as empathetic as I mean, really most people, right?
Yeah.
He had carried that empathy so well and carried it over to his art, just so well. And I think that's just so fascinating that he loved his art truly for what it was, and what had happened afterwards is what really pushed him farther.
Yeah, no, you see that and you're just like, you almost feel like what he's doing is justified, but then you remember some of those people are innocent bystanders that are getting killed and made into wax figures. So it's like, is it really that justified?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, his madness took over and he is a monster. Like, it's crazy, right? Because
he faked his own death,
Yeah, like, that's like the crazy part when you see in the movie is just like, they made it seem like he wasn't the killer because he looks normal, and he looks like he's not, like he wasn't that, like only I think he made it seem like only his hands got damaged in the fire, right? Like only that.
I think he was just disabled, but like he was wearing a mask underneath.
Yeah.
His.
He was in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. So, but yeah, the reveal part, right, where like it turns out that he was wearing a mask made of wax, a mask of his former self, which is crazy because it's like, holy shit, like you're just like.
It's crazy.
He pulled that off, and I get it, right? It's cheesy. No wax mask would last that long, but it's still like.
It was so real. You're right. I think that could have caught anybody who's watching off guard. And that's what I thought too. It's like, how do you pull this off?
Right, without sweating all the wax off.
Yeah, that too. Most importantly, I thought that was so interesting. I think that you brought up a good point too. That there was already a glimpse of him descending into madness, and jumping off of that point, I think that perhaps one of the points or one of the moments that really stood out to me was the macabre nature of some of these figures, like the scene that he did for Abraham Lincoln's death scene in the theater. Yeah, like that was like, that was quite disturbing.
Why out of all things do you have that there? That's the one, right, where you're just kind of like, out of all things, you have that, and but at the same time, it is kind of, he wants people to really, when they see his art, to be like, oh, see that, and that's kind of like the way a lot of musicians are, right? You know,
Yeah.
Going back to like, you know, a lot of the art, like Cannibal Corpse, like, oh, did you see that? You know, like that looked crazy. You know, like Butchered at Birth. You know, like these zombies, right? They're like killing, like, infants. Kind of like doesn't really show that, but you're like, oh, look at that, like, you know. And that's again, that's the other connection to metal, punk rock, and horror films. There's a lot of like those, the art that you see in album covers, you know, like reminds you of horror films or vice versa. You know, like Goosebumps. You know, when I would see Goosebumps, I see Goosebumps covers now, I think thrash metal. I think like, I see the Goosebumps covers now and I'm just thinking like, oh, that would look great with fucking my band name on top, right? Like that looks fucking sick.
Yeah, those were great.
And that's like one of those things where like that House of Wax fucking cover, that shit straight up reminds me of like what thrash bands started using as art, right? Like you see that, like you see that stuff, and then like look at I think Kirk Hammett from Metallica, he's really big into like horror films. I think he has like guitars that are like those covers of those horror films.
That's crazy.
That he like loves. You see that, and it's like, that's pretty fucking cool. Like, so there's that correlation, right? Like, you see the metal and the horror films, like, just like they look like it's on par. Like the art looks very influenced by those old school horror films.
It's like they were made for each other. I feel like you can't have either or, you know, without the other, if that makes sense. And like I find that especially with themes like revenge, which we see in House of Wax. I think that's a big one. That's a theme that you often see in metal. And I think that's really interesting. I think that on the topic of revenge, you know, I guess who hasn't felt or who hasn't enacted on revenge, right? To get your point across. I'm sure you have.
No comment. I got revenge on you.
Do it.
You it? I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Please. But anyways, I think that with how Vincent Price, you know, like I said, he was trying to prove a point, and he went as far as hanging his partner's dead body, you know, in his wax museum. On display.
Just to be like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah.
That's fucking nuts.
I mean, I'm not justifying anything, but I'd be pretty pissed if my partner was like, hey, you know what? Let's burn all of this and let's split the insurance money. That's fucking nuts.
What a piece of shit. I mean, I would have done it for the insurance. What? Fuck my art. No, like that. No,
oh my god. Would you say that about Through and Through?
No. I would not say that about any type of music I do. Because at the end of the day, right, like, you love your art, and no amount of money, at least for me, like, no amount of money is enough for the years I've put in of work, right? Like, I've done this since I've been, like, 16, 17 years old, and there's no amount of money that you can pay me to get me to stop.
Yeah.
And like I'm not gonna stop playing metal. I'm not gonna stop playing hardcore and punk rock. Like, I'm gonna play these things. You know, I'm a fucking metalhead to the day I die, and I will play this type of music to the day I fucking die. And I think that's how Vincent Price felt about his, you know, his wax figures. And when that was taken from him, he fell into madness. You know. Once that outlet's taken from you, you know, for a lot of people, same thing for me. If you take that outlet from me, who knows what I'd do, right? Like, who knows what I'd become if all suddenly I was told, like, you can't do music.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? I'm gonna kill you. Oh, like,
But you're right. I mean, that's a testament to your art and what you have created, and I think that absolutely makes sense. And who knows what um, the professor's life was like prior to, or all the hard work that has taken him to get there.
Yeah, right. Like he probably had a piece of shit dad who told him wax figures are stupid. He said, "I'll show you, Dad. I'll have a museum one day." And he had this museum.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know, like
On the subject of wax, have you ever found or do you find that like wax figures are creepy to you, or do you
fuck
find
yeah.
for real?
But I still would like to see them. Like that time in Hollywood, the wax figures when I saw them over there,
Oh yeah.
that was creepy. That was
I
cool.
I was like, I'm with you. Like I'm creeped out by it, but it's not something that I'm like truly scared of.
Yeah.
I felt that I was fascinated because there is a lot of work that goes behind it. Can you imagine just getting a thing of wax and creating like a version of you?
Well, to
Maybe.
create me, oh, you need God's help for that one.
So, um, so anyways, wrong question. But I find that I'm with you. I do think that there's so much work and just the artistic ability to do wax figures is insane. And like,
Yeah.
have you seen those pictures, or have you seen like those like botched wax figures of celebrities?
Those are hilarious.
I love
I've
those.
seen those. I've seen some on The Rock, which are hilarious.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was a big one. When it
Yeah.
came out. Then there was one. I think Taylor Swift, and that one was kind of botched too.
Yeah.
Lady Gaga was one, but those are awesome.
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch those. But yeah, that movie just like points out definitely what it is to like lose the thing you love. Another thing about that movie that I find interesting is the mood swings. Like that movie's bipolar. Like
you're right, and I didn't catch on to it until you mentioned it.
Like it's crazy because like when nothing horror is going on, it's like a happy couple movie. Like, well, no, not even just couples, right? Because you don't even find out that she's in a relationship to like mid of part of them. No, you fairly in the beginning, mid part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But like when she's hanging out with her friend and her friend's like talking to her about like you need to date somebody with money and all that stuff. It's like this. It seems like it's a romantic comedy, right? Like it seems like it's a romantic comedy at some points, and then once the horror stuff happens, which is really great, and I think a lot of horror films took influence from that. But that part, right, where like something bad's about to happen, like the mood changes, the colors on the screen like change.
The palette.
The palette is a completely different thing, and you just see like this deformed person that looks like he's been in a horrible accident, just trying to kill this girl. Because what did he want her to be? He wanted her to be Maria Antoinette, I think.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette.
Antoinette is Antoinette or Antoinette?
Antoinette.
Antoinette.
I don't fucking know.
I know.
Marie. I think he says Marie
I'm
Antoinette.
Mexican. I speak Spanish. Like,
but you're right.
yeah, right. Like he saw that while she was visiting his second museum, and like she saw, yeah, right. She saw like he saw her from afar, and he was like, oh, he sees her with the image of the Marie Antoinette, and it's like this guy's fucking sick. Like he sees people and he sees something. And he's like, oh, I want to turn them into a wax figure.
What was even more fucked up about that moment is that he didn't bring it up until she was starting to freak out about the Joan of Arc figure. She was starting to believe that was her friend.
Yeah.
And I think he knew that she was catching on, and I think that was. And don't get me wrong, she was gorgeous, and she very well could have been a very good model for Marie Antoinette.
Yeah.
But I think that was his way of trying to deflect of what was really going on. You know, like, oh, hey, you know what? You could also be a wax figure yourself, you know, or like you're a very good inspiration for that. And I think, you know, I think you're right that that was still very fucked up, and I think he was onto something, but at the same time I feel like that was just one of his ways to get her to distract her from, you know,
Yeah.
really going forward and figuring out if this was her friend or not.
Yeah. That's like the crazy part. Like he's even though he doesn't succeed, he's like 5 steps ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
Because with the mask, you know, the whole acting like he's in a wheelchair.
His assistant.
His assistant, yeah, acting like he needs an assistant where he's like, I need to tell the assistant what to carve because I lost my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Which he never did. Like, he was still mobile because he was able to kill people
right.
with his hands. Well, you know,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure you don't have to have 100% having hands to kill people. But, you know, like, that's like one of those things where you know, he played people. He was 5 steps ahead. Because when they started questioning about the missing bodies, they looked at him like, what is he going to do? He's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
He can't even use his hands.
He was so manipulative, and
yeah.
it wasn't just that he was, but like you said, he was ahead of everybody else. He had an answer for everything, and he was so unassuming.
Yeah, because he basically had people feel sorry for him. Yeah. And that's how he got away with it.
Yeah.
Because he, you know, if it wasn't for his obsession to make the main character into a wax figure, he would have never been caught.
I agree. I agree.
That's the fucked up part, right? Because it took one person, and you know, it's like they say, right? A person's worst enemy is themselves. You know, you're your own worst critic. That plays into that, because he felt, if I don't get her, then I'll never get anyone that's good.
Yeah.
And he was obsessed with that. And that's what led him into getting caught.
That's actually a very interesting observation. I do also want to add that in regards to the mood changing, I think that the thing that threw me off about the mood and how often it changed was the humor. You know, we had the 3 girls or the 3 women in the museum when they were showing it to the public.
Oh, yeah.
And they were, you know, making their comments. They were like throwing up or, you know, saying that they were sick after every exhibit they went to.
Yeah.
And then even at the end, too, when they're at the police station and, like, they make a joke. I can't remember what the joke was.
Yeah, it ends with a joke. The movie completely ends with a joke.
Yeah.
Which is like, this isn't a horror comedy. Like, you know, and who knows if that even existed back then?
Yeah.
Especially in such a golden era. Well, was that really the golden era of horror? No, the golden era was before Vincent Price.
The golden era of like Hollywood was like in the 50s, 60s. So yeah.
Then yeah, it would be. And like the way it, you know, that's when like horror is like, it's trying to mature into what it is now. Then again, a lot of horror is not mature. It's just horror, right? But like it's trying to build itself up, and like in some ways, this movie, even though it's not considered a horror comedy, in some way it influences horror comedy.
I think you're right, and I think it's also worth noting that Vincent Price went on to do a couple horror comedies later in his career. So I do think that there's something to be said about it, and I do wonder if maybe that is a way, especially for when this movie came out in its time in the early 50s, I do wonder if this was a way to add some relief to an already, you know, delicate and aggressive theme.
I think so.
Because it just kind of, in my opinion, I felt that it kind of came out of nowhere. I felt that the humor didn't really start to make itself known up until that point. I think like during the intermission part of it, and then till the very end. And I think maybe it's just a sign of the times.
Yeah, definitely a sign of the times, especially when like during that time, right, was when like women, obviously it's not considered a feminist movement like the one there is today, but in a way it kind of is, because it's showing like women women are the ones that really got something to worry about.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because men think a certain way of women, and that's like, again, his obsession with her being Marie Antoinette, it's like can be perceived as a man's obsession with any type of woman, where he's like, that's got to be my woman, and wants to keep her as a possession, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is mine. This is mine. That's like something women have always had to deal with, and I think that movie kind of plays on into that.
I agree.
And if I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong because you're the woman here. I'm not. Like.
I very much agree with that statement and with that idea, and I think that you're onto something, because a lot of the wax figures that the professor has and owns are women, and some of these women are, well, I do find that they're a mix of, of how these women are portrayed. Like, some of these women are portrayed as strong, like Joan of Arc, right?
Yeah.
But then you also have that one, there's a wax figure of Cleopatra, or there's one where she's swinging her hips.
Yeah.
But I do think that you're right, and I think you're onto something about how, especially with the professor's character, how he stole, I can't remember her name, but the friend's body from the morgue. It's like, that's taking ownership of somebody.
Yeah.
That she had no, of course she's dead.
Yeah.
And she had no way to consent. She had no way to defend herself. He just took her. And I do think that with how he was protecting her as she became the wax figure later, I do think that this is a very morbid way of saying that like you said, this is mine. I take ownership of this. I am her owner.
Yeah.
And how he later says that about the other woman, hey, I think you would be a great Marie Antoinette. And the lengths that he goes to, and as far as like in the beginning too, when he's chasing her down the streets and into the alleys, and she comes out of that traumatized. It's definitely something that we all worry about. We all leave the house with a target on our back,
which is fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even think about it that way. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and like again, I just want to point out, right, like, or maybe, whatever I come up with, if I'm wrong, you can tell me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a stupid guy at the end of the day. Like that's.
I do think too that it's a double-edged sword in some way.
Yeah.
That having, at the end of the day, and at the end of this movie, she ends up surviving. She ends up, getting her life back. But at what cost? Her friend is no longer there with her. She was the subject of violence, and so was she.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's, like, yes, she very much was, a very strong woman. She was a warrior. She went through and she escaped and she survived. But at the end of the day, just like a lot of women out there, she's also a victim.
Yeah. And, I feel like horror films, like, point that out, that this is society's problem. This is a problem that has been going on forever, and, not trying to, because I know people are going to be like, oh, they made it into a political thing, and it's just like, no, a woman's life is not political, like, it's basic human rights, and people who want to ignore this thing, but I feel like horror films don't ignore it. Horror films point it out. Horror films definitely are out there, like, showing it may not be as drastic as this, where it's a zombie or a disfigured man chasing a woman, but it is something that women had to deal with, and these movies are just like a giant metaphor to that.
Yeah.
But,
that's a really good point. I agree.
Well, some people are like, no, they're just killing people. Jason doesn't care who he kills. He just kills. And it's like, no, are these movies are like fucking. It's on point with what's been going on with society since forever,
Yeah.
and that's why I like a lot of horror films. You know, like
They really uncover what people don't
Yeah.
want to talk about.
yeah, true. And I'm not saying horror films are what teach men to be better to women. I'm not saying that either, right? Like,
Yeah.
far from it. But you know, if it's gonna start somewhere, like pay attention to shit. You know, pay. You know, that's like one of the things I like want to like notice. Like, and I'm not saying just this issue. You know, it's like you know, I like noticing that movies have this like back background message that's
Yeah.
kind of in your face, even though it's a background message, it's in your face, if that makes sense.
You really have to think about it because you're right. I think these movies send a message, but it's done in a way where like you have to be an artist yourself, like you have to be somebody yourself to really understand what's going on. Because I feel like for when you're a kid and when you watch these movies, you're like, oh wow, that's so cool. Somebody killing somebody. It's like, well, perhaps yes, on the surface level, yeah, or on the surface it is.
Yeah.
But you really start to unpack it, when you really pay attention to the details. Like for this one, same. I was like, wow, that was really cool. Vincent Price is in this one. That's fantastic. I love Vincent Price, but yeah,
his voice makes me sleepy sometimes. Oh, like that.
he does have a great voice.
Yeah, it's just like so elegant and educated, right?
When I first was watching Vincent Price movies, I didn't know where he was from. And that was the thing that made him so interesting because he was from St. Louis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's from St. Louis, but he was just so eloquent and well spoken that people thought that he had this. They thought he was from the UK.
Yeah, right. Like they thought he was European. It's kind of like the that one show Frasier. Where, like people think that him and his brother were from like another country, but it's just they spoke elegant. They spoke right. They spoke a little bit better because like they're. I used to watch Frasier as a kid, right? Which I never got the message of it till I got older. But like yeah, it's like their dad would talk like a normal like blue collar American, and then they would talk all like elegant, and you would think like, was their mother British or something? Like, no, was it? But no, it's just it's the way they carry themselves, and I think that was like one of the things that Vincent Price did was he carried himself in such a way that was so like soothing, but at the same time, I don't want to say in your face, but at the same time, like.
I think he was quite straightforward.
There we go, straightforward.
Yeah.
So, Vincent Price, one of the greatest actors in the horror genre, or just in general, right?
Yeah.
Because, dude.
Guy's amazing. He did it all.
You can't touch his films. Any remake to his film, to the films that he was in, are just not as good. Like the House of Wax remake.
Yeah.
I don't like talking smack about movies, and I don't think that remakes are always bad because it's like, look at the It remake. Well, I mean, technically the original It film was a TV series, right? Was like it came out on television. Yeah. It didn't actually come out on theaters. So technically, the It that came out back in 2017 was the first theatrical release, but I still consider it a remake.
Yeah.
Like that was good. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003 to the one in the 70s. Mm-hmm. It's not comparable, but it's good.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a 2005?
I think so. It was like it had like nothing to do with the original.
Not at all.
Movie. Yeah, like they made it into, like a bunch of dumb teenagers and, whatever. I really don't remember a whole lot, but yeah, it was like 2005. That shit was ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember seeing that movie and I thought this is crap. Like,
I agree.
Like, and this was even before I saw the original one, because it was one of the first bands I was in when I was like 16 years old. And there was like a summer, like that summer when we made a band, we would always hang out at our drummer's house. His name was Jerry. And we would hang out at his house and we'd watch like all these scary films or like comedy films. And I remember we put on House of Wax.
Mm-hmm.
And we just thought like, this movie wasn't that great. I only wanted to watch it because that one actress from The Girl Next Door was in it. I forget her name.
Oh, I can't remember.
Elijah Cuber or something. I can't
I don't
remember.
That guy, Chad Michael Murray, was in there.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
like, I think in some Hilary Duff movie. He was like the it guy back in the day.
Yeah. So like, yeah, like those people were like, it was basically like a big cash grab.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't. Story was horrible. I don't even want to like say like what I felt because all I remember is like falling asleep a few times or like not caring for this movie.
Yeah.
Or I think at some point we got bored of it. I think we did watch it to the end, and after that we put Chainsaw Massacre 3
Oh,
for some.
wow.
Or no, it wasn't 3. It was part 2. Yeah, it was part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which one's the one with the woman in it where they're fighting and she's like stuck in the cooler for a bit. They're like at a radio station. That is part 2, right?
No.
That's gotta be part 2.
We watched it one time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and that's the one where remember like those guys are on the radio.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is part 2 where like they show up.
I
like,
think
in
you're
a
right.
truck and they're trying to like cut them and they cut dude's head.
Yeah. Oh my
with the
god.
chainsaw. It's like that. That was I remember we saw that one and we liked that way better than the House of Wax remake. And that movie's not that great either. No, it's its own thing. I think it's not comparable to the first Chainsaw Massacre, but it's good. I like it.
I think that the remake did nothing at the end of the day. Like, I don't even think it did anything for Paris Hilton's acting career. Because that was like...
Who? No, like that. No, right. I got nothing against her. It's just like, I don't even know about her acting in other movies.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I think you're right. It was just a huge cash grab. It did nothing for the, with the original. It didn't do it justice, and it didn't really add to anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was ever a House of Wax remake in the future, especially with how often we're seeing remakes now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'd be open to it if they can do it justice, fine. But I'm being cautiously optimistic.
If they could do justice, I don't think you could do a movie that great justice.
Yeah,
that movie was meant for its time, and for its time only. And luckily, we get to watch it today and have fun with it. But I disregard the remake. It doesn't exist in my library of movies in here. Like it doesn't. It doesn't matter. If that makes sense. That movie just.
It's done. It's just, let's forget about it.
Yeah, let's not ever talk about that horrible movie again.
Yeah. Do you have any other remarks or any other comments that you'd like to add about the original House of Wax?
Oh, scenery. I love the scenery in the first chase when he tries to like sneak in the person's room.
Yeah.
And when she's running down the street and she runs to her boyfriend's house, right?
I think so.
Like, I just love the way the sidewalk looks because I think it's supposed to take place like in the early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
And like just seeing like the way the streets look, the fog in the background, and the way he's running with a little bit of a limp.
It was so eerie, and like I love, in a really weird way, I really like how it ends.
Yeah.
She's trying to get in the house, and they do open it, but that's a problem, and you see this a lot of the. Like in the news, or you hear it in other, or see it in other movies, hear it in stories, where it's like, you're banging on somebody's door to let you in, but who's going to let you in?
Yeah.
There's that chance that they won't.
Yeah, right. Like you're taking a big risk stopping and knocking, and it's like that scenery reminds me of like. Because there's places in Mexico that still have like that old timey look.
Yeah.
So like where my mom's from, where we're from, right? My mom's side of the family, Like it's still got that old timey look.
Yeah.
And like I remember running from people like that. Like my cousin's trying to scare me, dressed up as something, and I'm running towards my house and I'm knocking. And I'm like 12, 13 years old, like begging my mom to open the door, and I'm, you know, that's what that reminded me of. Like I remember, and then I realized I'm like, oh, it's just my fucking cousin trying to scare me.
Yeah.
What the fuck, you know? Or like
Oh
my
my
sister trying to scare me when we were kids and being out there.
It's definitely nostalgic, and I think that, you know, I think that the scenery also reminds you a lot of like late 1800s or early 1900s London.
Yeah.
Too. Like, you know, if you told me that shit, you know, but I think that it was so, it's nostalgic. I think that it's so dark and eerie. There's nobody there. Everything's closed. Yeah, I agree. That scene was just so, it was hard to watch sometimes. It was just so, it was so tense. And then once she breaks in or once she gets into the house and she's safe, it's like this huge relief. Like, you know, she's
it
in,
goes back into being a romantic comedy. Like,
yeah, like all that, it was just crazy. You're right. Like I didn't know, or I didn't really pick up on it until you mentioned it that time that we watched it together.
yeah.
That's crazy.
It's such a mood swing movie. It's a bipolar movie, and I love it.
If you were to rate House of Wax, what would you rate it?
9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. And the only reason why I don't give it 10 out of 10 is because of sometimes there's parts of the movie where it goes away from what the purpose of the movie is. I have this all like right here.
The same.
Like that part where they're at the what is it? What are those things old timey strip clubs called?
Oh my god, I forgot how you say it. But yeah, you're right.
Bathroom. I can't remember. Look
No,
it up.
no, it was like, you know, where it's like they do the dance, right? Where they're dancing. Yeah, because she's in there and then the guy's there. I can't remember.
I can't. It's funny because I said that word the other day because I was talking about this movie with someone. Now I can't say it.
Great.
But like, yeah, like where the women are dancing, like that had nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah, like I think that there were some moments where, like you said, it's the tone that changes, it's the mood, and you're like, so what am I really watching?
It just shows that her boyfriend was a piece of shit at the end of the day. Because he was like, I mean, I know he like helps her out, but like, he's like, this is normal. He's like she's like, I'm not really comfortable here watching these women dance. And he's like, this is normal.
Like, relax.
You know, relax, have fun. Or it's just like,
boy,
fucking men. We're pieces of shit. Like,
yeah. That's...
We really are. And I mean, I don't mean to laugh because we are. But like, you know, that part in the movie, I was like, why did I have to do it? And because at the end of the day, he came through to help her out.
He really did. I do think that he was still an instrumental character in the film. But, you know, I would give this a movie a 10 out of 10.
I know you would because you love Vincent Price. I think
100%.
You have him tattooed on you, don't you?
I do. Right here.
Yeah, Vincent Price.
You know, this one is the one that everyone points out to right away.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, who is that? Who is that? It's like, what do you think?
It's my abuelo. Oh, like that.
Bro, I'm gonna start saying that. That was my tío.
It's my tío.
Hell no, you do kind of look like my tío.
He really does.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you very much for being my first guest on Gore and Grapes. I'm very thankful and I'm grateful that you're here.
I'm not. Fuck.
I will never
invite
you back.
I'm kidding. No, this is really fun. And thank you for having me because I know, like, horror films is something I don't really share with that many people. That's like one of my favorite pastimes, and you're like one of the few people that knows. And I guess now whoever watches this is gonna know. But like, nobody ever like really knows I'm really into horror films like that. You know, people always think like
it's all about the music.
It's all about the music, but it's like, hey, a lot of the reason why I like music is because of horror films or vice versa. Again, you know, one of my favorite singers of all time, King Diamond.
Yeah.
You know, like that's one of the reasons like I love King Diamond so much. I know my lyrics and my band are more serious and, you know, about the neighborhood, about like how we grow up, you know, social awareness and stuff like that. But like, you know, I guess political as well. But you know, especially with like the new through and through stuff, I'm kind of like, what if Madball and King Diamond had like a baby, right? You know, like this street hardcore band and this like this metal band with like a horror theme, and that's what I'm trying to do with like my lyrics lately. I'm talking about the hood, but what if it was like a horror film, like something out of fucking Goosebumps or something out of fucking Night of the Living Dead, right? Like, it's all like a. That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, at the end of the day, the message of the songs is still like about what's going on, social unrest and things like that.
Definitely.
And but you know, I do like throwing in those like King Diamond high pitched vocals.
Oh, for sure.
You know, that's so that's like something that we're gonna have pretty soon. I can't say when the album's gonna get released, but eventually it will. And
soon.
Hopefully, it's before the end of the summer. I'm assuming. I also, this is the first time I'm gonna let people know, but I also have a solo project coming out soon. It's gonna be a lot more traditional heavy metal, but
oh yeah,
there's a lot of details to it that I can't share yet, but eventually I will. And you know, thank you for having me here and letting me talk about one of my all-time favorite movies, because I've been dying to talk about it, because some people are like, ew, wasn't that made like in the 1800s? It's like,
shut the fuck up.
was there even TV in the 1800s or film? But like, you know, I love that movie, and I think again, like, you know, a lot of horror films that I like to watch are like horror films that a lot of other people wouldn't want to watch because they think they're either too old or there's a message behind it that's too political.
Definitely.
But at the end of the day, they're good movies and you should watch them.
I very much agree. Thank you again for joining us. We'll definitely invite you back so we can continue talking about our favorite movies. But thank you. And again, thank you all very much for joining us today. This is just the start of season 3. We'll definitely have a lot more coming and a lot more that all of you should be expecting. And moving forward, I will actually be doing video episodes. So it's no longer just audio, but if you like audio, feel free to keep going to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And for the rest of you who like to have the video format as support, I will be there. So thank you all very much for watching, and thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. It's time for me to eat and then go to sleep.